In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at a wheel that I've been waiting a long time to get my hands on, and that is the Formula Pro Elite by Gomez Sim Industries. Let's get into it. Okay, so here we have the GSI FPE. Now, the reason why it's just in a anti-static bag is I split the shipping with a friend of mine. We ordered the wheels together. We live up in Canada, so we were able to save some good coin, and that's why I don't have the box. But rest assured, the packaging was great. Tons of packing peanuts, and no concerns in terms of shipping damage or anything like that. So let's take this out of the bag. Awesome, so here is the GSI FPE in Onyx, and this wheel does come in a few different colorways. If you kind of notice, I kind of went with the all black with just some different gradient colors. So there's some silver and some black and some white. There's so many different colorways that all look really good. I felt like I just wanted to go with a classic look that I know I'm never gonna get bored of. If you really wanted to, you could probably cut some stickers out and put some overlays on top of these buttons, but I just think this Onyx colorway looks amazing. Not to be confused with another colorway called Blackout, which honestly, I would say it's a bit of a misnomer because it has a lot of yellow on it. The Onyx, which came out afterward, maybe that was the issue. I think this is the best looking one, personally. Now let's kind of go over some general information about this wheel, starting with the dimensions. So this is a Formula style in terms of ergonomics and shape, but it's actually, I would say, is more of like a GT wheel in terms of size. So if you can see here, we're actually about 320 millimeters from edge of the grip to edge of the grip. That's about 12 and a half, 12 and 3/4 in terms of width in inches. And if this is an expensive wheel, it's over 1,500 US retail, and I'd say it's a good candidate for a one size fits all wheel. Despite it being Formula in terms of styling, I would, again, the ergonomics actually really fit and would be great for GT style racing as well. Obviously, you don't want to drift with this. You probably want a round wheel, but a one size fits all wheel, I think this definitely tops the charts for me. Reminds me a lot of the McLaren GT3 wheel that Fanatec makes that everybody loves, even though it's a very affordable wheel. I think this is basically a ultra high-end version of that wheel that gives you the same type of ergonomics that people love, but at the same time, a tons more functionality. And of course, as you can see, it's very obvious, more buttons as well. So staring at us front and center is this screen. What is not noticeable is that it's actually a touch screen, and the software that runs the screen as well as the lights is going to be controlled by SimHub, which is really cool, as we can create our own or use custom displays and screens and dashes that other people in the sim racing community have created. In terms of the button layout, we have these push buttons throughout, so 5 on each side. They're actually alternating colors. So we have the gray and then black, and gray. I believe these are anodized aluminum, and they feel quite nice. It has good actuation force required on this spring, but I kind of like that it's actually not a clicky feel, which sometimes feels a little bit hollow. So this feels actually a really nice action. Really like that. So these 10 buttons are just single action, single programmable. Now in the center here, we have 5 rotary dials, and all of these are the same from what I can tell. And what is also unique about them is that each of these rotaries are also push assignable. So within the 5 rotaries that I have here, we have essentially 3 assignable actions for each of the rotaries. So that's 15 plus 5 plus 5. We're up to 25 already. Now, right here in the middle is, with the GSI logo, is actually a funky switch. So this is a 7-way, which means we can use it as a rotary both ways. It has up, down, left, right, as well as push. So that's another 7. So 25, 7, 32 on the front face. and that is excluding the ability to use the touch screen itself to assign functions, right? So even more capability there. Now, if I had one criticism for the funky switches, there's a ton of functionality packed into this, but in a real race situation, this is very useful for pit stop black boxes and kind of configuring your pit stop assignments on the fly. You kind of almost want that maybe closer to your thumb. It feels much more natural to have your thumb be what's controlling a funky switch functionality. So being in the center here, you're really going to be limited to using this when you're already going down pit lane to make your setup, as opposed to kind of going through a short straight and trying to make some changes to your setup, because you're going to have to remove one hand to put it right down center to make any changes there. Let's flip it over and take a look at the rear. So we have our shifters, great feel to it, great action. I think sometimes getting it just right with a magnetic shifter is actually quite tough. Either it's too stiff or it is too light, and you kind of miss out on the benefit of actually having it magnetic. So these feel great. And the carbon, which I upgraded the paddles to, is actually the same thickness as the carbon plate that's used for the front facing of the wheel itself. So if we take a look at getting the calipers out, and we'll measure these. So looks like about 0.15 inches or 1/6 inches, and about almost just about 44 millimeters. Make sure that's zeroed. Yep, about 4 millimeters in thickness. One thing I noticed right off the bat in playing with the paddles is the spring for the clutch is actually quite stiff, and I'm actually quite excited to see how that feels when we're out there using this in a race. And the clutches themselves looks like there are magnets on the clutch as well, even though this is mostly spring action, so maybe a little bit of fine tuning on the feel of the clutch paddles. Here we have the receiving end, the female end of the DEN connector for the USB cable. This is a wired wheel, and I know some of you guys might be feeling, for a high-end wheel, why is it still wired? I think there's some pros and cons to this. The pros is you're not locked into a certain ecosystem. So I know there's the SimuCube wireless protocol. Some wheels are also using Bluetooth, which is much more open in that sense. But I think the USB is a good compromise. The other thing about the USB is, even though I think wireless would be able to probably handle the bandwidth that's needed to run the screen at high frequency, in terms of the updates, the USB, for sure, you have tons of headspace to be able to run this and push a lot of information to the wheel itself. Another piece related to the ergonomics of the wheel, you'll notice that these grips are made of rubber. So I personally love rubber grips. I find Alcantara grips and suede grips tend to, they fade and they wear out very quickly. They kind of look gross when all your skin cells and your oils are starting to blend into them. Even with the Formula wheel from Fanatec, I ended up replacing those grips with faux leather ones that I found to be much more useful. And this reminds me a lot of the overmolded grips that are used, again, in the Fanatec McLaren wheel, which was a fantastic hit in the sim racing community for how cheap that wheel was, really, right? So this is kind of very similar technology, I would say, or application as what you would find in the McLaren wheel, in that it's molded to the carbon face itself. Pros to that, I think, is it's like a seamless application, and it's very sturdy, very beefy. It's contoured, extremely comfortable. I would actually say if you had small hands, like I have medium-sized hands, and this is definitely the beefiest wheel that I've used. So if you have small hands, actually, it may be a little bit tricky to wrap your whole hand around. I almost even struggle to have my fingers touch, the thumb to the index finger. Not that that's something that you need to do, but that actually gives you a sense for just how beefy these grips are. I think the one drawback to having overmolded grips is they are fixed application, right? They're not replaceable, but with this kind of technology and build quality, I don't see you running into any issues where the grips will not last the entire life of the wheel itself. So as I mentioned earlier in the video, the FPE as well as some of the other wheels that GSI manufactures comes in a variety of standard colorways, but you can also fully customize the wheel, not only in colorways, but also in the labels and how you want to change the text or even the symbols of the labels. So let's kind of take a quick look at that. So the things that you're going to be able to customize online with their browser-based customizer, which is great. Like you can just do everything, get a preview and a simulation of what it would look like. And those customizable fields will include the color of your push buttons, what the anodization is going to be, the color of your rotary switches, the color of your funky switch, the color of your labels. So for example, here we have the pit limit label, as well as the symbol from a set number of symbols that you can pick to assign to each of the button labels. Now, the label text itself can also be customized. So, for me, this makes a lot of sense. Pit limit here, flash here. But let's say you wanted your flash over here and your pit limit over here, you can make that change. There's a lot of functionality around mute and volume up and volume down as part of the standard set, but maybe you don't talk to anybody when you're racing online and those buttons don't really mean anything to you. You might want to add something here, maybe traction on, traction off, rain lights, etc., etc. All these can be whatever text fits into the label. You can kind of type it in on the online configurator and get multiple sheets of stickers sent to you as spares for your wheel as well. Now, the other parts that you can customize as more of a option for the wheel is whether you want your screen to be touch sensitive or just a display. And then on the back, whether you want your paddles to be aluminum or to be carbon. And here, as you can see, I went with the carbon. I don't know, just because why not? Carbon's cool. Now that we've gone through the wheel itself, let's take a look at some of the accessories that come in the package. Two things that you're going to get with the wheel itself. One is this USB cable, and then the other is a set of spare stickers in the default configuration for the colorway that you chose. What was a surprise to me was GSI also included a set of captive screws, which I thought was going to be a paid add-on if you wanted to get these, but it's great that they included them. How they work is it's a threaded, I believe, M5 screw, but you can tell that the threads don't go down the entire shaft of the screw, only part way, so that when you put your quick release on the back of the wheel, because those two things are machined separately, and if they're both threaded, chances are the threads are not going to line up. Having these captive screws allows you to thread it through the first item, which is the quick release, then have the screw drop to the unthreaded portion for the quick release, and then the threads only go in to the wheel backing itself. So super smart solution, and that way you can actually avoid drilling your quick release if it came threaded from the manufacturer. And the blue on there is just some Loctite, which is a nice touch to make sure that these screws don't back off. So the two sticker sheets, which correspond again to the colorway that you chose when you ordered your wheel. These, you can tell there's a clear coating on top of the sticker as well, which is kind of nice. So they're not going to, the labels are not going to rub off and fade over time that you might see in some of the other custom wheels that you can get. The sticker sets are not coated, and then they will just rub away from sweat and friction. Last thing to take a look at is the USB cable. So your standard USB-A on one end, and the other side is this fancy DIN connector, and this is a 4-pin. What's useful about this is going to go to the back of your wheel, and if you think about it, as you're kind of turning it rapidly, there's a chance, let's say you're trying to catch the car from a spin, you swipe the USB connector on the back, and if it was a friction fitted USB-A or similar type of connection, that could easily get unplugged, ruin your race. Whereas this DIN connector, you can tell here that it's actually threaded. So this will thread to the back of your wheel and make a very secure, mechanically secure connection, and it's not gonna fall out at all. The coil itself is plastic, soft plastic. So it's, you see these connectors actually very popular nowadays in custom high-end mechanical keyboards. And some of those have like a really cool like anti-tangle mesh or fabric kind of coating. This is not that, nor do I think it's really necessary. There's also an EMI collar on the USB-A side, just to make sure that this is as clean of a connection as possible. One thing that I've heard, depending on your computer setup, is when you plug in your wheel to your computer, you probably want it to be an independent and potentially higher powered port, because with the screen and with a touch screen, the wheel is going to draw more power than your typical USB device. Think of it almost like a Stream Deck in that sense, right? So a Stream Deck or an RGB keyboard sometimes doesn't fully light if you don't give it its independent USB or a powered USB if you're using a hub. So that's our review of the Formula Pro Elite by GSI. Now, of course, this is a very high-end wheel, so I'm curious, for the same price, what other wheels would you consider? Put your suggestions in the comments below, and we'll catch you on the next one.